Ready?
Yes, sir.
Call to order for the Board of Adjustments meeting for the August 22nd at 6:30 PM. If the secretary, please call the roll and declare a quorum, please.
Todd Fisher,
Present.
Ronald Rentschler,
Here.
Bobby Reynolds,
Here.
Michael Westlake, Frank Norwood,
Here.
Debbie Powell,
Here.
David Tyree,
Here.
and Commissioner Henderson.
All right, next we need to approve the minutes of the June 28th regular meeting and the July 26, 21 quasi judicial training. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So be it. Any reports from committees, members, and staff? All right. Any old business? Nope. Any new business? We need to elect a chairman for the Board of Adjustment. Let's take any nominations at this point.
Go ahead.
I nominate Ron Rentschler as chairman.
Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Also, since I've become the chairman, we need to elect a vice chairman of the board. Have any nominations?
I will nominate Debbie Powell.
I will nominate Bobby Reynolds. I decline.
I knew that would happen.
She does not want it.
Do I hear a second anywhere on either one of those?
I second Bobby Reynolds.
Any others? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank
So
you.
passed. All right. First order of business is a variance request V 22-01 filed by Sherry Hartzell, property located at 6902 Matthews Mint Hill Road, tax parcel 195-182-63, to request a variance to allow an increase to the non-structure signage. Anybody who is going to give testimony tonight must come forward and be sworn in. That means in any one of these variances for tonight. Got enough room for everybody. Put your hand on the Bible, and I think we got enough room for everybody to get up here. Spread them out a little bit, make some room. Get in there, John.
I don't know if I can squeeze it. I'll hold my hands up.
There.
All right, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give tonight is the truth to the best of your knowledge and belief, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Hello, Michael. How you doing, man?
All right.
Good.
Trying to keep my head screwed on straight.
All right, so on V22, who's presenting for that? Yes, ma'am. Step up to the podium.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Sherry Hartzell, and I'm here for Planet Fitness, trying to get a variance for some additional signage for their walls. And if you're familiar with this location is landlocked. You can't really see the building from any of the roads. It fronts two roads, but you really can't see it. It's in that shopping center. And the building, due to the size of the building, we feel the larger signs would look more appropriate on that building, as well as help give them some visibility.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions, Mr. Westlake?
Yeah, what's the increase of the signage that you're looking at?
It's quite substantial. It's going
Threefold.
from the allowable 64 to 126.
Well,
There's,
That would be two
it's
signs.
asking for a total of 130.05 with both signs.
With both signs, yes, sir.
It's right there.
Oh, was it right there? I didn't see it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I remain unconvinced that action by this board is required on this request or the one following. I believe both signs are allowable under Section 6510 of the Mint Hill Ordinance, and I would ask the town attorney to review and render an opinion on.
You're saying they are allowed?
I believe they are allowed, yes.
Well, I'm not be prepared to answer that right here on the fly. but
Yeah.
Take a look at this, look it up for a second.
Okay.
John may have some
Didn't
comments
we,
on that too.
didn't we have this email transaction back and forth last month
We did, yeah.
and determined that the other did not apply?
Right, so I would disagree, would say. But certainly if the applicants want to cancel this variance and, try under that ordinance and then appeal, then they can come back to you and appeal. That's.
I may jump in there, I can answer that process question on the fly. Certainly John's correct about that, what you would, the planning staff has made its interpretation of the ordinance, and applicant is allowed to appeal a staff interpretation of the ordinance, and that would be right back in front of you folks to have an appeal, and that would be a different hearing. You all would act as an appellate board and hear arguments for a different interpretation. So I do think as a process matter, we ought to stay on track tonight with the variance request and hear it unless the applicant is wanting to pull that back. And if we want to revisit, regardless of outcome tonight, I suppose they could do that as a separate matter and appeal the interpretation, and we could be back here, I guess. Yeah,
Right.
I know that's the answer to the process.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go, but I have one question.
Okay.
Is this property part of the shopping center itself, or is it a separate thing?
I believe it is part of the shopping center itself.
So if it is part of the shopping center, then the marquee that is on Matthews Mint Hill Road, they would have access to put signage on that marquee, correct?
If the sign is not already maxed out. Do you know that information, John? Is it?
I wouldn't.
Do not, I don't know, I mean, they have a listing sign phase. So I don't know what each slot, what the square footage is.
That to me seems to be the other alternative, because I see the oversized signs on the building. The building is blocked from view from the road, so nobody's going to see those signs until they pull into that Matthews Festival, or the Mint Hill Festival there. They're not going to see the signs, so it would be, to me, waste time, effort, and money to put that on the building.
My question is, the way I read this, you exceed the permitted 64 square feet by 130? Because you're asking for 126 and one sign is 67?
Correct,
So the
yes.
total is 194, not the 130. So it exceeds it by 130.
Correct.
So which is almost 3 times the Mint Hill allowable.
Right.
Okay.
Anyone else have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I got a question that, looking here through their answers here to some of the questions is, if this was so important to the project, why did you select that site, knowing that it's landlocked?
Unfortunately, when they build these sites, they don't really take the signs into consideration until it's time to get a permit for it. And then they're blindsided by something like this. I wish the architects would look more at signage when they go in to develop something like this.
Any other questions or comments? All right. So we shall go into, you may sit down, ma'am.
Okay, thank
We
you.
shall go into our fact-finding mission on this. Item number 1, unnecessary hardships would result from the strict application of the ordinance. It shall not be necessary to demonstrate that in the absence of the variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property. Mr. Westlake.
Unnecessary hardships would not result from the strict application of the ordinance. The size of the sign and the location of the building, you wouldn't see the increase of signage anyways.
Okay. Mr. Reynolds?
The unnecessary hardships would result from the strict application of the ordinance. I don't believe that that's so either. It's not really hindering anything.
Okay. I agree with Mr. Westlake and Mr. Reynolds. Mr. Tierney?
No unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of this ordinance.
Mr. Norwood?
I agree.
I believe if the ordinance is interpreted in the way that the staff has interpreted it, that there is no unnecessary hardship on the part of the applicant.
Ms. Powell?
Unnecessary hardship would not result from the strict application of the ordinance. The applicant has provided good reasons as to why they believe a variance is needed. However, reasonable use can be made of the property.
All right, the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, or topography. Hardships resulting from the personal circumstances, as well as hardships resulting from conditions that are common to the neighborhood or to the general public, may not be a basis for granting a variance. Ms. Powell?
The hardship results from conditions that are not peculiar to the property. The hardships results from conditions that are common to many, if not all, of the businesses within the Mint Hill Festival Shopping Center.
Mr. Fisher?
I agree with Ms. Powell.
And I also agree with Ms. Powell.
I agree with Ms. Powell.
I also agree with Ms. Powell.
I think the hardship, it does not result from conditions that are peculiar to the property. Almost all of the businesses in there are under these same scenarios.
Mr. Westlake?
I agree with Ms. Powell.
The hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. The act of purchasing property with the knowledge that circumstances exist that may justify granting a variance shall not be regarded as self-created hardship. Mr. Westlake?
The hardship is a result of the actions by the applicant of the owner. The signage is a self-created hardship by the owner.
Mr. Reynolds?
The hardship, it did result from actions taken by the applicant because signs are allowed, just not this big.
I agree with Mr. Reynolds. Mr. Tierney?
I agree with Mr. Reynolds.
Agree?
I agree.
Debbie?
The hardship did not result from the actions taken by the applicant. The hardship is an inherited condition of the location of the Mint Hill Festival Shopping Center.
All right, that takes care of all of that.
You have one more.
One more.
One more.
Oh,
Test with the spirit purpose.
well, that's not on this page.
On the back.
The request for variance is consistent with the spirit and purpose and intent of the ordinance, such as the public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. Ms. Powell?
The requested variance is not consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent. A variance would not just affect a small parcel of residential property, but would affect the entire town by overriding the decisions made in the development of the town by the Planning Committee, which would not keep the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance. Additionally, it would create injustice surrounding businesses that are abiding by the 64-square-foot sign ordinance.
Fisher?
I believe the variance is consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. I just believe it's not being interpreted correctly, in my opinion.
Mr. Norwood?
I agree with Ms. Powell.
I agree with Ms. Powell.
I also agree with Ms. Powell.
I agree with Ms. Powell.
All right. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to deny variance request V22-01 filed by Sherry Hartzell for Planet Fitness for property located at 6902 Matthew Mint Hill Road, being tax parcel 195-182-63, requesting a variance from section 6.5.6 sign design and construction standards, requesting for a 126.81 square foot sign and one for 67.24 square feet, which would exceed the allowable signage provided by the ordinance by 130.05 square feet. My motion to deny is for the following reasons. Unnecessary hardships would not result from the strict application of the ordinance, as reasonable use can still be made of the property without a variance. The hardship results from conditions that are not peculiar to the property, and that these conditions are common to many, if not all, of the businesses within the Mint Hill Festival Shopping Center. The variance would not just affect a small parcel of residential property, but would affect the entire town by overriding the decisions made in the development of the town by the Planning Committee, which would not keep with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance. Additionally, it would create injustice surrounding businesses that are abiding by the 64 square foot sign ordinance.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Roll call vote?
Approve the motion.
Approve the motion to deny.
David, Frank Norwood,
Yeah, approve.
David Tyree,
I approve to deny.
I approve to deny.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay, variance, read this back off again. The variance request V2201 filed by Sherry Hartzell for Planet Fitness property located 6902 Matthews Mint Hill Road, tax parcel 195-18263 has been denied. Next, we move on to variance V2202 filed by Chad Earp, property located at 7020 Brighton Park Drive, tax parcel 135-381-68. This is also a request for a applicant seeking to add 19.5 square foot sign to the wall extending from the building facing north. The 19.5 square foot sign is in addition to the existing permitted 64 square feet of signage on the signage. Yes,
Hi.
ma'am.
My name is Gay Diller, and I'll be speaking for Chad, but he's here to answer questions if we have any.
Okay.
And I'm with Mark Oil Company, and we actually are the property owners. We have 20 convenience stores and BP stations around Charlotte, and Chad owns 4 of our stores. So we're celebrating ARP's 70th year in business, and we think that ARP's might be the longest standing, oldest, still operating retail business in Mint Hill, maybe. Somebody might debate that, but that's what we think. So we're very proud of that and proud to serve Mint Hill. So we purchased this property where the Brighton Park store is in 2006. And Mark Oil Company, we have a certain business model. We don't have gas stations and convenience stores on major interstates. They're not like travel centers or truck stops. They're neighborhood stores, and they're situated along commuter routes and near neighborhoods. So we carefully selected this site, anticipating that it was going to be one of our most successful sites. Also, the fact that it's situated right beside a Harris Teeter store, and we have that partnership with Harris Teeter where people come into our stores and pump gas and use their Harris Teeter points. So we felt like this store, when we When Chad moved in there in 2006, we were pretty confident that it would sell twice the volume of fuel and inside sales as the original ARPS on Fairview Road, based on the fact that it was right near there and a little bit better situated to our business model. And it has 8 gas pumps and 2 diesel pumps, which is exactly twice the amount of pumps as the Fairview Road. So over more than 10 years, though, we've done great with that store. I mean, it's not like a hardship putting us in a situation where we're thinking about closing the store, but we have realized that that store is not, it's not doing as well as we anticipated. We're really not meeting our complete goals with it. So we went back and we did some remodeling work on the original ARPS, and we put a couple of new signs there. And as soon as we did that, we started just really studying this Brighton Park site, trying to figure out where there's just it seems like there's just a little hole, there's something missing in our sales there. So this is what the site looks like. As you can see, if you're headed northbound on 51, there's a fuel price sign there, and then if you're inside of the Brighton Park, we have a great sign on the front of our building over the storefront, and of course we have that big bright BP canopy. It's very lively, a lot of activity. What has happened over time, there's been a change. The trees have grown up and it has sort of blocked. We had some signage non-illuminated on the front of the building, but you can't even see that now. Furthermore, when we moved in there in 2006, there was not a stoplight there, and there's more businesses that have moved in around there. So now when you're headed southbound, all you see really are the trees, and you're really just looking towards the stoplight to make sure you don't run in the back of somebody or anticipating where to turn. So after going around and around this site about 1 million times over the last year, we truly feel like we have a visibility problem on our building. So we feel like it's right there. When you're coming down the street, if you anticipate, a lot of people nowadays, like I do this, I will Google or pull it up on my maps on my phone to see where a gas station is. And if you're headed southbound, you can't really get your eye on the gas station. There's nothing to see. The building is completely brick on that side. It's hard to even see the car wash. The canopy you can't get your eye on. So there's nothing really to identify our building coming in that direction. And we feel like that is the source of this little kind of leak in business for us. So what we want to do is place a 19.5 square foot ARPS wing. That has become our identifying mark on this wall. And that's what it would look like. So if you can imagine without that there, it really looks, it almost looks like just a wall or you really can't see anything identifying us as open for business going in that direction. So I took this series of pictures, and I have a video if you all want to see it of holding it up, driving down the road. But after a lot of research and looking at this, we determined that right there is where we need to put that wing, just for visibility of traffic headed that way. And then at night, it would also be illuminated so that you could see it traveling southbound. So our goals tonight are to, if we can be granted permission to put this sign, we feel like it would ensure a safe and easy access to the site. People would be able to identify our building without the interruption of paying attention when to turn at the light. We feel like we need just a little bit more art recognition for our brand there. And we feel like this will enhance the appearance of the store and give character to the facade, which is very plain looking right now. So that's it. That's our request.
Any questions?
So it seems the site has already been approved for 2 existing building-mounted signs as well as a ground-mounted sign. So my question would be, can you achieve your goal by rearranging the existing signage, perhaps removing the sign on the back of the store to the side of the store?
We talked about that. We talked about moving the sign. We have a large sign on the side facing into the shopping center, and it would be very expensive to either move that to the other side or to take that sign off and make it into 2 separate signs.
My question is, do you know what percentage of your business comes locally from Mint Hill?
Can you answer that?
No.
Probably a large percent. I mean, we've
Well,
been involved at Mint Hill Madness and talked to a lot of people out there. Everybody recognizes.
That's what I would imagine. I would say 80% plus is probably Mint Hill. Everybody knows where that place is that lives here. I mean, it's been there, 14 years now?
Well, and that's what we thought, actually, when we moved into Brighton Park. Honestly, we were thinking that in the next 10 or 15 years, that this would take all the business away from the original store, and that's not true. So we decided to do some upgrades on the original store, and they're neck and neck, really, on success. But after we did that, we're looking at this one, and we do feel like if you're not turning into that shopping center, you're missing it. And we're afraid that people are driving straight by it, and then they get down the road, and we do have some competition down there.
And I'm looking at the sign that you want to put up there. It's a wing with an E on it. If I'm from out of town, I'm driving, I don't know what that is.
We talked about that a lot too, and we feel like right now it looks like nothing, almost to the point where it looks almost like an empty storefront. And that occurred to me one day when I was visiting the site, and I pulled back out and I looked back at it, just the way that front of that building is designed. So we want to put something there that lights up and looks like a store. But it is recognizable to the Mint Hill people.
I have a question. It's sort of like Mr. Fisher's question, but the sign that you're saying that cannot be seen because of the trees, can it be removed? And if it's removed, would that allow this sign to be put up without any violating the ordinance? I don't know if it's a town, maybe town
It's a
question.
non-illuminated sign, right?
You mean the sign on the front?
Yes.
Art letters.
Yeah, okay, so that particular sign, that was actually required by the Board of Commissioners.
Okay.
So when she speaks about the building already being at the maximum 64 square foot, that does not include that sign.
Okay.
It's a separate sign that the Board of Commissioners, at that time when they approved it, they wanted that there. They
Okay.
requested that sign be placed there. So it's not impossible to remove it, but even by removing it, it's not gonna gain them any extra square foot.
Okay. That answers my question.
Anyone else?
Chad, did you have any comments?
All right, thank you. We'll go into our fact-finding mission now. Excuse me, unnecessary hardships would result from the strict application of the ordinance. It shall not be necessary to demonstrate that in the absence of the variance, no reasonable use of the property can be made. Ms. Powell?
Unnecessary hardships would not result from the strict application of the ordinance. The hardships described by the applicant are legitimate concerns. However, Even with the BP canopy not being visible from Highway 51, the gas pumps along with their roof and coverings are visible to me when I'm driving by.
Mr. Fisher?
I agree with Ms. Powell.
Mr. Norwood?
I agree with Ms. Powell.
I agree with Ms. Powell. Bobby?
I think unnecessary hardships would result from the strict application of the ordinance and would minimize their street visibility.
Mr. Westlake?
I agree with Ms. Powell.
Total hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, or topography. Hardship resulting from personal circumstances, as well as hardships resulting from conditions that are common to the neighborhood or the general public, may not be used for basis of granting the variance. Mr. Westlake?
The hardship is not result of the conditions of the property. The business has been there for 14 years, and so I don't see any reason to be adding any more signage.
Mr. Reynolds?
I think the hardship does result from conditions that are peculiar. The trees are larger and limited visibility now.
I agree with Mr. Reynolds. Mr. Tierney?
No hardship results from the conditions are peculiar to this property, such as location.
Mr. Norwood? Mr. Reynolds? Mr. Fisher?
I agree with Mr. Reynolds.
Ms. Powell?
The hardships results from conditions that are not peculiar to the property. The hardship results from conditions that are common to many businesses whose signages are only identifiable upon entering the shopping center.
All right, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. The act of purchasing property with the knowledge that circumstances exist that may justify granting a variance shall not be regarded as self-created hardship. Ms. Powell?
The hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant. The particular hardship of the trees blocking the wall signage facing Highway 51 did not result from actions taken by the property owner.
I agree with Ms. Powell.
Mr. Norwood?
I agree.
I agree with Ms. Powell.
I agree with Ms. Powell.
I'm going to agree with that.
I agree with Ms. Powell.
The ordinance requested is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance such that the public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. Mr. Westlake?
The requested variance is not consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance. It has nothing to do with public safety. All the other businesses along the street have to play by the same rules with the same amount of signage.
Mr. Reynolds?
I think the requested variance is consistent by allowing additional visibility.
I agree with Mr. Reynolds. Mr. Tierney?
I agree with Mr. Westlake.
Agree with
Mr.
Mr. Reynolds.
I believe that the variance request is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance based on varying interpretation of the ordinance.
Ms. Powell?
The requested variance is not consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent. Variance would affect the entire town by overriding the decisions made in the development of the town by the planning committee, which would not keep with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance. Additionally, it would create injustice to surrounding businesses that are abiding by the 64-square-foot sign ordinance.
All right, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to deny variance request V22-02 filed by Chad Earp for a property located at 7020 Brighton Park Drive, being tax parcel 135-381-68, requesting a variance to section 6.5.6 sign design and construction standards, requesting to add a 19.5 square foot sign in addition to the permitted 64 square foot sign structure signage for the following reasons. Unnecessary hardships would not result from the strict application of the ordinance, as the gas pumps are visible from Highway 51, even if the BP canopy is not. The hardship results from conditions that are not peculiar to the property and that these conditions are common to many businesses whose signages are only identifiable upon entering the shopping center. A variance would not be consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, as that would affect the entire town by overriding the decisions made in the development of the town by the planning committee. Additionally, it would create injustice to surrounding businesses that abide by the 64 square foot sign ordinance.
Do I have a second?
I second Ms. Reynolds' motion.
Roll call vote, please.
Debbie Powell,
I approve to deny.
Todd Fisher,
Approved to deny.
Frank Norwood,
Approved to deny.
David Terry,
I approve to deny.
Ronald Rentschler,
I approve to deny.
Bobby Reynolds,
I'm gonna disagree.
Approved to deny.
Variance is denied. All right, next, we have a variance request V22-03 filed by Scott W. Bartholomew, who's the architect, property located at 10609 Russet Place, tax parcel 139-274-24, to request a variance to request a reduction to the 20-foot side setback. Anybody who's speaking on that?
My name's Scott Bartholomew. I'm here on behalf of my client, Michael Donnelly. As described in my forms that were sent in, what we're dealing with is a non-compliant lot that predates the ordinance. When it comes to cul-de-sac lots, they have a intention in the ordinance for a very wide pie shape, which allows for 20-foot side setbacks and still allows for a reasonable front on the house. This particular lot is obviously a very narrow pie shape and yields the type of numbers that I put in my description, basically less than 40 feet at the front setback of frontage, and that would include, I shouldn't say, it's 40 feet total. So anyway, what I have here shows the intention and how our house plan would fit on the lot, provided that we had the 10-foot setbacks versus the 20 that are required. Ultimately, I think it's within the intent of the ordinance to make a lot viable. The neighbors' houses on both sides are relatively far away, so I don't think it encroaches on either of them. And it does leave necessary fire separations between the house and the property lines as required by North Carolina code. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
Oh, yes, I have questions.
Yes, okay.
Oh, I got questions. All right. Give me a little history of you and your client. Did you consult with the client to buy this piece of property? Was this piece of property purchased years ago and then you came aboard? Is the house, is it a custom design house or is it a home from the internet that you've taken and tinkered with and sealed?
Some history. My client is from New York City. He's very interested in getting out of there and coming down and enjoying the southern weather and the southern people and just getting away from New York. He did recently buy this lot, and prior to contacting me, I think he sort of fell in love with the area, found a lot that was well priced, and purchased it without really, doing what I would consider rather due diligence. But I'm also very knowledgeable about this kind of thing, and most lay people are not. So hence we ran into these issues with regard to, he also had a very difficult, I shouldn't say difficult, he had to get a custom septic design done for this lot to accommodate a septic system back in the back. Then to the point of, is this a custom house? Absolutely, it is a custom house. It's driven by an intention by the client and what he wanted to do with the house, but it also is driven by, as you can see, the topo lines start to get very tight right at the back of that house. This house starts to slope off rather significantly. As it is laid out right now, we have a roughly 10-foot elevation change front to back of the house, which can allow for a decent lower level or basement area. Whereas if we go beyond that, we're starting to get into a very significant stem wall, something that's rather obtrusive to the neighborhood. You know, it could easily become a 10 or 15-foot stem wall before you even get to the lower level.
What, do you know what's the square footage of the house?
The house as drawn is, I think it's roughly 1,600 square feet. It's not very large.
Yeah, I kind of calculated around 1,800. So if you're at 1,600, what percentage of that house is in the setback?
Ooh, 30%, I would guess.
Yeah, that's what I calculated at,
Okay.
30%. So that's quite a significant amount. The house cannot be pushed back a little further? You can't put a half a basement on it?
We already have a basement. That would be a second basement is what it would be. I mean, it would be 2 stories of basement or, you know, if we did that. And it also starts to really fall way back beyond the other houses in the neighborhood. So it looks a little out of place further back. Or it would drop down the hill so significantly that you wouldn't even really have any presence whatsoever on the road.
So you could design something to get it into this 20-foot setback then?
Oh, now the 20-foot setback, we have some infill areas back there. I mean, yes, I'm an architect. I can design anything that doesn't hang from the sky, you know. Cost feasibly, not particularly, no. We're getting into some areas that were sort of dump sites back in there as well. And the excavation and the foundation, I think, would be prohibitively expensive.
So, but your agreement, though, that something can be put into 20-foot setbacks if you take out the cost factor?
Yes. I say that, but I'm preconditioned on not knowing things like height restrictions and that kind of thing. I think you could start to build a tower there, something that has multiple stories above ground to accommodate the square footage that he's trying to accomplish and the uses he's trying to accomplish. But it becomes so narrow that I think you'd end up, I'm not sure exactly if it would meet the ordinance. This was designed per the desires, and it didn't go much further than a schematic to get to the point where we realized that we needed if we were going to continue with this design, we had to stay within it, or we had to get this variance for these side setbacks.
And I got another question here, probably for staff, that on his application here, he's asking for side setbacks. Now, the lot is not in compliance on the frontage, correct? Correct. So he didn't ask for a variance on the frontage. So even if he got a variance on the side setbacks, the lot is not in compliance.
Right, but we would penalize, I mean, there are lots all over Mint Hill that don't meet our existing rules. yeah, he's not asking for variance from the front end. This was definitely a lot created before the hill.
Yeah, so picking up on that point, would not section 377 of the ordinance apply in this case for a non-conforming lot?
I'm not looking at it.
Basically, it says any lot that was approved prior to adoption of the current ordinance is subject to the prior ordinance under which it was adopted or created.
The problem is we don't know what the ordinance was, right? Because it was done under, most likely Mecklenburg County. So just so you know, these lots, the way we do this is when someone comes over the older lot, we will look at the recorded plat. And some of these plats go back decades. And typically, when you go back, definitely 70s and 60s, they might show the front setback, but they do not show the side setbacks. So what we do in that case is if setbacks are shown, we'll honor those setbacks. If setbacks are not shown, then we use what's in our ordinance today. And that's how we've always applied that.
As you recall, there were no setbacks shown on this property, were there?
That's right. So that was the pickle he was in, is that there are no side setbacks shown. So he would have to use the setbacks that we have today, which are 20, because he has septic. But knowing, most likely, this lot did have reduced setbacks. This lot very well could have had 10-foot setbacks back.
Yeah, or alternately, no setback, right?
Yeah, right.
Ultimately, it could have no setback if none were shown.
It's fine. I'm sure there was some sort of setback
Yeah.
back then, but could be.
I have a question for staff, just so if I use this in my argument, I want to know if it's correct. He says the 10-foot side setback as requested maintains a North Carolina code compliant fire separation between proposed structures and the property line. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the exact code you're referencing, but surely there are homes that have setbacks less than that.
I can elaborate further and explain that. It's in the building code, it's not an ordinance. And it's, you can be closer to 5 feet from the setback, but then you have to start to protect that side of the house, to protect your house and your neighbor's house.
Okay.
Just so you know, I mean, our ordinance, we have sections of our ordinance that allow 6-foot setbacks. There are neighborhoods that have been created that have 6-foot, 5-foot.
Just look behind.
Okay.
There's Teeter.
Is this drain field approved?
It is applied for. I don't know that we've gotten an approval yet.
It's an engineered system or,
Engineered system, yeah. Larry Thompson did it.
yeah.
Any other questions?
There's been no neighbors to speak against this?
What?
All right. We have some other folks to hear from then.
That's what I want to hear.
Thank you, sir.
For or against?
Yeah.
Hello,
Hello.
my name is Emily Foster, and I received this letter about the hearing, and I'm coming to say that I do not want the variance to be granted. I feel like it will adversely affect the value of the property I own, and I don't like the idea of a 10-foot setback. It's pretty rural, but this property's been in our family for many years, so I'm just against it. I don't want it.
All right. Anyone else?
Hey, I'm just representing, we're going to be the neighbors to the person that's building beside of us. So we're to the left of the picture that you see. I have reviewed, my husband and I have reviewed the variances with the town, just so that I can further understand kind of what the neighbor is asking for. According to my husband and I, it doesn't directly affect us. as much as it'll affect the builder. So we don't have a problem with the variance. The only thing that we ask is that we could see where we could run into some issues is with the driveway. I don't know if you can see at the very tip top there, where the cul-de-sac and the driveway start. Our driveway is directly to the left of that. So we would ask that the builder, whoever is in charge of the property, to have a survey done before they build that driveway, just to ensure that's not going to infringe on our property once they start putting that in. And they may have already had it surveyed. We don't know that detail, but that's all we would be asking for.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I have a question for the staff. The neighborhood that this cul-de-sac is in, what, the majority of the houses in there, what are their setbacks, side setbacks?
Yes, they vary. I mean, I did look around at some of the aerials, and of course I don't have perfect numbers, right? So I'm just looking at an aerial, and I'm using a little measurement tool, it's not perfect. But some look like 20. Actually, the property to the right of this image is a vacant lot. Next to that, there is a house that appears to be 10 feet away from the property line. So that one appears to be 10.
Could you call up Polaris so we could see?
Pull it up on Polaris.
House.
So here's this area. So again, I mean, this is not survey, this is, but
Right.
give you a pretty good idea. So here's the lot in question, and here's the vacant lot here. And see here, this whole corner, that measures about 10 feet.
Okay.
But then if you look around some of these other homes,
That guy along both them lots wanted, that guy that's like 5 or 10 foot off, he doesn't own that adjoining lot.
Looks like it's
I think actually the person that just spoke owns that lot.
The only reason I say that's the driveway's on the other property.
Yeah.
There's a building in the back on the other property, all kind of little stuff.
Yeah, this is owned by a different person.
Is it?
He's in first place.
But if you look at some of the other houses here, it does look like there's
Mm-hmm.
more than 20.
Those aren't pie-shaped
Yeah,
lots.
exactly. These are larger lots.
Okay.
From here, it looks like it's closer.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
What about at the other end of Russet Place there? There's some very narrow lots there,
Down on the bottom side?
down at the bottom.
Bottom.
Go the other way.
Other way.
Top.
Cursor at the
Top. Go up. There you go. Down at the bottom of Russet down there.
Yeah, right there,
Oh, yeah, look at those.
both of those.
Sometimes those lines on Polaris aren't totally accurate. They're off a little bit.
Let's see, that bottom.
20 foot, maybe? Seven.
11 feet,
11 at the front and 20 at the back, probably.
yeah. That's tough.
Anything else? All right. We shall go into the fact finding now. Unnecessary hardships would result from the strict application of the ordinance. It shall not be necessary to demonstrate that in the absence of the variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property. Mr. Westlake?
The hardship would not be a result of the application of ordinance. The design can be altered to fit with the topography of the lot. And the architect had stated that he would be able to design something to fit in within the 20-foot setback, so that would make reasonable use of the property.
Mr. Reynolds?
I think unnecessary hardships would result from the strict application of the ordinance by not allowing this home to be built like he's wanting.
I agree with Mr. Reynolds. Mr. Tierney?
I agree with Mr. Reynolds.
Mr. Norwood?
I also agree with Mr. Reynolds.
I agree that unnecessary hardship would result from strict application of the ordinance.
Ms. Powell?
Unnecessary hardships would result from the strict application of the ordinance. With the development of this lot predating the ordinance, it would create an unnecessary hardship to require them to adhere to the current lot side yard setback.
Okay, the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, or topography. Hardship resulting from personal circumstances, as well as hardships resulting from conditions that are common to the neighborhood or the general public, may not be used for the basis of granting the variance. Ms. Powell?
The hardship results from conditions that are peculiar. The hardships results from the pie-shaped size of the lot, non-compliant frontage width, slope of the land, and the septic area creating limited space.
Mr. Fisher?
I believe that hardship resulted from a lot that was created prior to the adoption of the current ordinance that did not contemplate 20-foot side yard setbacks.
Mr. Norwood?
I agree.
I agree with Ms. Reynolds.
I agree with Ms. Reynolds. Mr. Fisher?
I think the hardships do result from conditions that are peculiar to the property due to its pie shape.
Mr. Westlake?
The hardship is not a result of the conditions that are peculiar to the property. The hardship is self-created hardship by the design of the house.
The hardship did not result in actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. The act of purchasing property with knowledge that circumstances exist that may justify granting a variance shall be regarded as self-created hardship. Mr. Westlake?
Yeah, the hardship is a result by actions taken by the applicant, basically for my same reason before.
Mr. Reynolds?
I think the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the owner. The lot was subdivided years ago.
I agree with Mr. Reynolds. Mr. Tierney?
I agree with Mr. Reynolds.
Mr. Norwood?
Mr. Reynolds, I agree with Mr. Reynolds.
I agree with Mr. Reynolds.
Ms. Powell?
I agree with Mr. Reynolds.
The requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance such that the public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. Ms. Reynolds, or Ms. Powell, I'm sorry.
The requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance. I agree with the applicant in that the requested variance provides the owner through further creative architectural design with the reasonable ability to utilize the lot for a single-family home as set up by the ordinance.
Mr. Fisher?
I agree with Ms. Powell.
Mr. Norwood?
I also agree with Ms. Powell.
I agree with Ms. Powell.
I agree with Ms. Powell. Mr.
I
Reynolds?
also agree.
Mr. Westlake?
The requested variance is not consistent with the spirit and intent of the ordinance. The 20-foot side back should be maintained to try to keep some consistency through the neighborhood.
Motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve variance request V22-03 filed by Scott W. Bartholomew, architect for property located at 10609 Russet Place, being tax parcel 139-274-24, requesting a variance from section 6.1, building lot standards and dimensional requirements, requesting to reduce the 20-foot side yard setback to 10 feet. My motion to approve My motion to approve is for the following reasons. Unnecessary hardships would result from the strict application of the ordinance as this developed lot predates the ordinance, and no reasonable use can be made of the property without a variance. The hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, and that the size of the property is peculiar in its pie-shaped size. It has non-compliant frontage width, and the slope of the land and septic area creates limited space. A variance would keep with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved, and that the lot will adhere to the setbacks of surrounding residents in a neighborhood built prior to the current ordinance.
I'll second that.
Roll call vote, please.
Debbie Powell,
Approve to approve.
I vote to approve.
I'll vote to approve.
I vote to approve.
I vote to approve.
I agree.
Disagree.
Variance V 2203 filed by Scott Bartholomew, architect, property located at 10609 Russet Place, tax parcel 139-274-24, to request a variance to reduce the reduction of the 20-foot setback is approved. Being no other business,
I move we close.
second,
Second.
adjourned.
Thank you all.